we have a heritage, we have a history of athletic prowess, and we need to continue that, and we need to solidify that.
After last year's disruptions, how pleasing is it to you as a key member of the Olympic family to finally see the Tokyo 2020 Games just a couple of days away from starting?
No, absolutely pleased, and I'm pleased in this context. Our athletes have worked for 4 years. This is the pinnacle for them, and therefore all must be done to ensure that they realize their aspirations. Yes, we know we have challenges in respect of COVID, but athletes must come first. We are going to guarantee a very safe environment for them, but it's a job for them. And if they do not appear every 4 years, then that's a job lost. So we have to take that into account, but at the same time we have to ensure that we provide a very safe and secure environment for them. So I'm very pleased that the Tokyo Games is now on the way.
Are you convinced though that it's the right decision given the continuing challenges, particularly those in Tokyo?
Well, there'll always be those challenges associated with the Games. I'm sure that the central government as well as the local organizing committee have done their own due diligence. Yes, there are going to be positive tests, we know that, but it is how you cauterize that and ensure that you don't have an outbreak. And I'm satisfied that they have instituted proper measures to ensure that there is not an outbreak. And then the National Olympic Committees and the athletes themselves have a responsibility to ensure that they practice hygiene, that they are circumspect in their interface, and that they follow the protocols slavishly and adhere to and ensure that there's full compliance.
From the information that you have received, how satisfied would you say you are of the various safety measures in place?
In the circumstances, I'm satisfied. You're not going to get 100%, but I believe that the central government has taken all steps to ensure that there is safety. And certainly from a Jamaican perspective, we have been re-emphasizing the protocols from last year, early last year, when there was the advent of the pandemic. And we have ensured that we have personnel in Japan that are going to be very critical in terms of health management. So we have people on the ground in Japan who are going to have our interest as a delegation at heart, and who are in fact medical practitioners, physiotherapists and masseurs who will complement our management team, which is very capable, absolutely capable in delivering healthcare management.
How important are these games for Jamaica as it continues to cement itself as a major player in the Olympic movement?
Absolutely. And we have a heritage, we have a history of athletic prowess, and we need to continue that, and we need to solidify that. I'm going into the games with very much sheer optimism. I know that our athletes, as all athletes, have faced challenges over the last year with the pandemic. That is a common enemy, and we can't use that as an excuse. But I'm very hopeful, I'm very optimistic that we will demonstrate our athletic prowess this time around. Yes, sometimes people will say we are not at the level 2008, 2012, but everything is cyclical. And I'm sure that our athletes are committed to ensuring that they carry the colors of the country with pride and with dignity.
You have just secured another term as JOA president. Is there anything that we can speak to? Practical things that you believe are to be done or will be done by the JOA to ensure that we return to those levels and exceed some of the sporting performances we have seen?
Well, what is our mandate, and we take our mandate seriously, is not only to ensure that we retain our history and our heritage in track and field, but also to ensure that other sports emerge onto the international scene and take their rightful place. So what we have said to our federations, every 2 years we must have a national draft in order to expand the pool of talent and deepen the pool of talent. When you throw the net strategically wide, the probability is that you're going to get more talent that you can hone and transition to the international stage. We will continue to invest in our athletes. We invested $370 million in the last quadrennial. Those are your primary assets, and therefore you have to invest in them. We will continue to do that, and we will continue to do that around structured programs. We have advised our federations that they must have that infrastructure. What do I mean by that? The administrative infrastructure. In order to deliver the results that you would wish, you have to have the right competencies, your coaches, your administrators, and your medical personnel as well. Sports psychology has become very critical, particularly in these times. And we have always emphasized that you need to have a sports psychologist on board. I think it's for the first time that we are carrying a sports psychologist, Dr. Hamilton. He worked with the Paralympic team for the last 2 or 3 years. He's very much excellent in terms of his practice. He has demonstrated his abilities and his credentials with Jamaican teams, even with our track and field teams at high school. So we have him there, conditioning in mind, ensure that the athletes have that mental agility and fortitude in order to overcome the challenges. What we'll be doing also in the next quadrennial is to import expertise in order to help our member federations to get to that level. Expertise in terms of coaching, expertise in terms of business and strategic management of the sport. Because sport has evolved to such an extent that you now have to treat it as a business. And the business of the athlete is ensuring that he performs well or she performs well. The business of the athlete is to ensure that the sports psychologist conditions the mind. So we'll be looking not simply at the nuts and bolts, but also the science of the sport to ensure that the athlete understands what are the critical factors that go into optimum performance, and also to educate the administrators that we have gone beyond paper now. There's a scientific approach to ensure that the athlete performs optimally. There's a scientific approach to ensure that he or she does not pick up injuries. So we'll be looking at the science, we'll be looking also at the administration. Clearly the financing has to be on the table at all times. And we are satisfied that in the last quadrennial we were able to achieve those results with the Commonwealth Games, the CAC Games, the Pan Am Games, all of which were historic for Jamaica.
Are there any plans or current discussions taking place with other NOCs or organizations that you will perhaps be advancing in Tokyo?
No, certainly. Our bilateral relationships we have expanded. We signed a memorandum of understanding with Ukraine. That was not able to get Ukraine.
Okay,
Ukraine. That was about to get off the ground, and then the pandemic came. It would have seen some of our athletes going to a camp there, particularly in combat sports. We are going to be signing with 2 or 3 other NOCs from which we can benefit. Those emerging sports, what people call non-traditional sports, but we don't treat them as such, to assist them in terms of their technical prowess and their technical capacity, so that they will have a fair opportunity of transitioning into the international scene. So we're looking at our bilateral relationships, we're looking at multilateral relationships, and not necessarily those in sport as well, because you would understand that there has to be a resource, there has to be a revenue base. And if we can develop strategic relationships with international markets, with the international financiers, to the benefit of our athletes, and we will do so.
What are your own thoughts on athlete advocacy and its role in Olympism?
The position of the board of directors of the JOA is that we have to respect the right to protest. I term it as the rights revolution. Black lives matter. Well, athletes' lives matter as well. And as the Olympic Charter says that the athlete is at the heart of the Olympic movement, then if the athlete is at the heart of the Olympic movement, then you have to respect that right. And you have to ensure that you do everything in order to ensure that it is in fact at the epicenter of the Olympic movement. In terms of protests at the Games, you have to be very careful. We respect the right of protest, but that has to be organized in such a way that you do not place the Games at risk. We do not want the Games to be a platform for armed protest, because you have to ensure that your financiers do not feel that their capital is at risk. But what we need to do is to get up off our knees. We have been on our knees for centuries, for one reason or the other, and those of us who know history, we know exactly why we were on our knees. We need to rise from our knees now in a very structured way and ensure that the protest determines results, so that 10 years from now we are not talking about still on our knees. So I support at the Olympic Games fora that will be established and organized where athletes can in fact articulate and express their views in a very organized manner. But you have to have results, you have to have outcomes. It cannot be protestation and then you exude energy and then you go home and then the status quo remains the same. You have to have deliverables and outcomes. Rule 50 is one of the outcomes. It is being relaxed now. And therefore we have to look at the Olympic Charter and ensure that the athlete is one of the pillars. In the present Olympic Charter, the athlete is not specified as one of the pillars. The NOCs, the IFC and the Olympic movement. We need now to ensure that from a philosophical point of view, the athlete is named as a pillar of the movement in the Charter. And therefrom, we take active steps to ensure that we have pragmatic results, i.e., have on all your commissions mandatory, must be mandatory that all athletes, all commissions should have athletes on it. There's an athlete representative on the IOC board, and the IOC charter, in terms of its language and context, very supportive of athletes. But they know we want to move to another level. Have athletes on all commissions, because at that level, you are going to have policy making. At that level, you are going to have the determinants of the game. How does the game unfold? How does the game in terms of protest? What format are you going to adopt to ensure that the right to protest is articulated and not inhibited, but at the same time, the culture of the games, the success of the games are preserved.
Is this going to be a part of the orientation from the jury's standpoint to the athletes in Toyko?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. We have Toyko Cedric. We nominated him to be an athlete representative on the IOC. And I'm hoping that he'll be able to garner the necessary votes, because that will be historic. Jamaica not only needs to demonstrate its prowess on the field, on the chevron, in the pool, but we have a lot to offer in the boardroom in terms of influencing policy making. And I'm hoping that Toyko will realize his objective and be at that level where he can, from an athlete perspective and from a Jamaican perspective, influence policy.
Right. Final one for me. We understand Shelley and Fraser Price and Ricardo Brown have been designated the island's flag bearers. What are your thoughts on those athletes individually and their role?
No, absolutely. We made a selection. We have established criteria. Yes, you have to perform. Character is very important for us. Support, admiral support of country, role model, standard bearer. You have to have be a standard bearer. Not all gold medalists are standard bearers, but all standard bearers may very well claim to be gold medalists. So we look for persons who can represent, because when you hoist that flag and you carry that flag, you carry it with a sense of history, a sense of responsibility. You are representing the nation, and therefore your character, your attributes have to be such that people do not dispute when they see you carrying that flag. Shelley and Ricardo have demonstrated over the last 2 years that resilience, that character of not only being athlete-centric in terms of helping their fellow athletes, but also being a standard bearer for the country. And therefore I think it is meet and right that the selection was done. And we were very fortified in terms of the selection. Ricardo is going to do very well. He is very resilient, he's focused, he has a national pride. He wants to do well for his country first, and then for himself.
How was the selection made? Was it the management team at the Olympics, or was it above that level?
It was at the board level as well as the management team. What we do is to sift views from various persons to come to that determination. Yes, it is true that many others are eligible. Many others are eligible. But as you know, in life, only one wins the prize. And therefore, we thought that the selection of Shelley and the selection of Ricardo will exemplify those attributes that we are reinforcing in the Olympic movement.